Hello, everybody. My name is Kaja Klimek. I'm a film educator and film critic from Poland, and I have the great honor and pleasure to talk with Philip LaZebnik, one of the tutors in Kids Kino Lab. Welcome, Philip. It's nice to meet you. Meet you, let's say it.
Yes, good to meet you virtually, which we've had a lot of practice with lately.
Oh yeah, especially when you do the workshops, I guess it's like all those little windows for almost 2 years already. It's difficult.
Yes, and I hope that that's at an end. I have high hopes that we'll be meeting in person after this.
Yeah, I wish to you and to myself that it's the last Zoom ever, but I guess it's going to take a while before it ends. So let me just say that Philip is a screenwriter and playwright and also screenwriting consultant. So how that happened that you started to work with Kids Kino Lab? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, it's because before this, I had done one workshop before called North by Northwest, which no longer exists. But when Magic was thinking of setting up his own workshop, he asked around and my name came up, and I was very, very happy to join at the very, very beginning. I mean, almost all of us have been around, since the very start of Kids Kino Lab.
That sounds really interesting, and also gives the good energy when you think about the project, that people who started after a few years are still in it and work with next generations of film writers and playwrights.
Yes, and I hope that in the years since the founding that we've learned some lessons, and it's even better then.
Mm-hmm. But I need to take us a bit back to the past. How did you get interested in cinema for kids? Because it's a specific area in cinematography and filmography for everybody. Some people say it's difficult to make a good film for kids. So it was more like a challenge for you that you started with this stuff, or a dream come true, or what's the story behind that?
Well, like most things in life, it was a series of accidents. Because I started in theater, actually, writing musicals. And then when I went out to LA, my first jobs were in sitcoms, in television. But when I was writing a television series at Disney, there was a search for writers for an animated feature at Disney. And since it was the same, somehow my name came up, and the movie was Pocahontas. This was when the second golden age of Disney animation was just beginning, because there'd been only a couple of new movies that had come out. First of all, the Little Mermaid, and just after that, I believe it was Beauty and the Beast. And I loved them. I loved them in particular because they were musicals, and that was my start. So they asked me if I could spend 8 weeks working on Pocahontas, but it was the hiring season for television. And my heart was broken. But I said, I'm sorry, but I just can't do it. The timing is wrong. And then they came back to me and said, how about 4 weeks? And I couldn't resist. So I joined up at the very beginning of Pocahontas for 4 weeks. The 4 weeks, of course, turned into 8 weeks, turned into several months, turned into several years. And I just found myself doing animated features, which was incredibly exciting. And I just fell in love with the whole process.
And on behalf of every girl that was born in the 80s and beginning of the 90s, thank you for doing this, because it's like a cult classic. And I remember I've seen Pocahontas maybe 3 times in the cinema here in Poland with my dad, who I think at the second turn, he started to sleep through it, because it was so, with the melodies, of course, the music, and it was so calm for him that he always fell asleep. But I was like, singing the songs, of course, because we had this Polish version. So every girl and every boy now, when nostalgia for 90s is so much on, people are singing it at every party. So thank you, Philip, for...
Yes, I've understood that Colors of the Wind is a sort of ecological anthem in Poland.
Yes.
Yes, that is where I met Stephen Schwartz. The music for Pocahontas was written by Alan Menken and the lyrics by Stephen Schwartz. And I went on to do Prince of Egypt with Stephen Schwartz. And now we wrote the live theater musical Prince of Egypt, which was just at the West End. So the beginning of a great friendship there.
Oh, nice to hear again that when you start working with people, it stays in a way with the same group, and that the process and development of the friendship and work they're joined together. It feels that it's important for you. Am I right?
Well, I've always told people that the film business, above all else, is about people and about networks and about friendships. It's why these workshops are so important. It's the people you meet who you like and who like you, who you'll wind up working with. People do not hire other people who they can't stand to be in a room with.
No, that's
so the workshops are a great chance for people to meet other people, to network, to get a hands up. It's not just learning about the tools of the trade. It's very much about who you're in the room with.
Yeah, that's true. And I really like the fact that you say about having the, connection and to like people that you work with, because it always changes the atmosphere in the room. And when you work in this kind of positive environment, the work goes smoother. So I wanted to ask you, what's important for you when you start, as recently, now in January 2022, recently you started another workshop with another group. So as you are in the beginning of the process, can you tell me what is important for you just to, set the situation with new people that you start working with?
Well, I always tell the participants that there's some important foundations to the sessions. One is that it's a very positive, supportive atmosphere. It's very tough to write a musical. You hear a lot of no's, you get a lot of negative feedback, but I want my group, and this is true of everybody at the workshop, to feel that they're in a supportive place where everybody is on their side. So first and foremost, it's not a matter of casting judgments on people. It's a matter of asking questions, of supporting them. Everyone who gets into the workshop has proved that they have a good idea and that they can carry it through. So we start off with the assumption that everybody is going to have a great movie, and it's just a matter of working on it. And that has been very successful for us. Another aspect is that everybody contributes to everybody else's project. It's not enough that you get to go to a room and listen to what I or what other people have to say about your project. You have to contribute as well. So, and we've been very successful with that also. Everybody takes it very seriously. You get what you give, as Magic often says. The more that you give to other projects, the more that you receive for your own project.
It sounds like the group dynamic is a really important aspect of working on even your individual project, that you are always, talking with other people and including their ideas. But it's nice that at the same time it stays subjective and personal story. So it's really important for the person like you to have this group under your wings in a way. Am I right? Because it sounds like that.
Yes, the group is all important. And I always say that individually, I may be an idiot. I may say things that are of no use whatsoever. But the moment that you get a small group of people together, and that the moment that they become an audience, the audience collectively is a genius. So this, I always say, is their first little audience in the room. We generally have 4 projects, often 8 people or so sitting around a table. And that's enough people to be an audience for a project. And often it's amazing how there can be a consensus of opinion about projects. And that consensus is enormously useful to people.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a bit about the biggest challenges that you came across with working with people on their projects? Because I guess it's also important for future workshop participants to know that it can be also tough and it can be also difficult, but there are ways to overcome stuff that can be like that. Can you tell us a bit about this?
Yes. Well, one of the obvious pitfalls is if people have been working on an idea for a while, they can get caught up in an endless cycle of revisions and rethinking and second thoughts and lose track of the basic story. I always say the first question is, what is this film about? And that's a hard question to answer. Screenwriting is, I always tell people, at heart, just a series of questions that you ask yourself and that other people ask yourself. And they're simple questions. You know, what is this story about? Who is this about? What does my character need? What does my character want? They're simple questions, but they're not simple to answer. And speaking of simple, I always say that the hardest thing in the world is to be simple, is to tell a simple story, is to be clear about something. So that also can be a challenge. Often when you're starting out, your screenplay is autobiographical. Yeah, it's very important personally to somebody. That is a huge challenge because the more emotional the writer gets about the material, often the less emotional the audience will be. You get, the idea is not to have you, the writer, feel something, but to make the audience feel something. So it's, you know, screenwriting is tough. It never gets easy. But what I try to do is to give them some basic tools with which they can use to work on the film that we're working on in the project, but also for every other project that they will come up with afterwards.
Yes, let's talk a bit about your assistants, because I know that during the workshop you don't work only you and the group, but also there are people who are helping you out. What's the role? What's the aim of having an assistant during a project like this?
Well, the assistants are enormously useful. I think it would be very difficult to do without them. First, there's just the simple logistical matter of getting everybody in the same place at the same time on the same page. And so the assistant is the person for me who often will deal with all of these problems. The assistant is very much, of course, a participant in the room and is giving their thoughts along with everyone else. But because we do have personal interviews and talk to applicants for the assistants tend to be people who have a lot to contribute to the room and whose thoughts are extremely useful. And so I always take a good deal of interest in what they have to say. Also, there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of talking, a lot of things come out of each of these sessions. The assistant's role is to keep track of all of this and to make a little history, not only for me, but for the workshop, so we know where the projects are at any particular time, what their goals after the workshop are, what the big ideas were coming out of the workshop. Are there any problems? So it's a very important role.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a bit about pitching, because that's also an important part of the meeting when it's not only online, but when you meet and you have a chance to pitch your project. I'm a huge fan of Robert Altman's film, The Player, with Tim Robbins, and we have all those stories about pitching films in elevators, 25 words or less. or just trying to attach the film to a different film. So let's say Alien is like sharks in space and all those legends that are in Hollywood. Why, from your perspective, pitching is an important part of the process when you are during the workshop and you are working in the lab?
Yes, and for two reasons. People often hate pitching and say that they don't want to do it, they're afraid of it. But pitching is an enormously important part of the job. You just can't get around it. You have to be able to communicate your idea to other people. And it's remarkable how often people don't read anything in the film business, but instead listen and talk. But it's important for two reasons. One, not just to sell your project so that it can get made, but also it really helps you to understand your movie. If you can pitch it in a few short, simple, efficient sentences, then you also understand your story and have a clear idea of what your story is. If you can't, if you fumfer and stumble and stutter through sort of an incoherent explanation of your story, that's a clue that you really don't at heart know what your story is. So for two reasons, pitching, I think, is crucial. One, for communicating to other people what your movie is, but two, to communicate to yourself.
That's interesting. Actually, I'm working with my students. We have classes on documentary filmmaking, and part of the way to finish the course is that they need to pitch a project that it's their dream come true. And I wondered if I'm right when I tell them that pitching is not only about telling things, but it's also supposed to be a bit and tiny creative. So the people that are listening to you are, interested in who you are, not only in your project. What do you think about that part? And
that's absolutely, yes, that's absolutely correct. And often as you're pitching your movie again and again, over and over again, you are improving your pitch. You're sort of listening to what you say, and you're learning things just from the act of pitching. Anytime you talk about your story is good, whether you're in the workshop discussing the story with your peers who are also interested in film, whether you're just telling a casual acquaintance what your story is, anytime you're talking about your story is good.
Yeah, so it's nice to hear that this kind of thinking about pitching is correct. And I also feel that when you have people that you work with and they are the first audience, it's safer environment. Then when you go to this like big pitching, you stand on this big scene and show some excerpts and ideas from your film, you feel a bit safer because you've done it with people that really know you and like you. So I guess that's important also.
Yes, pitching, of course, is scary because you either succeed or you fail. You're being judged on a million different bases versus pitching to a room full of friends. The thing that I always tell people, though, is you have to remember that nobody is hoping that you're going to fail, no matter where you're pitching. Everybody wants to find a great story, and most people are friendly and not hostile. But nonetheless, yes, it is scary, and public speaking is a huge fear for a lot of people. The only way to get over it is just to do it a lot.
It's the best advice you can give to anybody. You just have to practice. Okay, let's talk a bit about the projects and the way you select them. What you are, because you said everybody wants to find interesting stories. So what does it mean for you as a person and also as a tutor that the story is interesting? When you select the projects, what you focus on?
Well, a good idea. An idea which has a room for emotion, for drama, for comedy, for action, and that will speak to the audience, in our case, families, which include children, but also adults, something that will speak universally to them. I do give a talk about the 3 secrets of Walt Disney. And very briefly, because I can go on for a couple of hours, but just to sum it up in a couple of minutes, when Jeffrey Katzenberg and Steven Spielberg were starting up DreamWorks, Steven Spielberg asked Jeffrey if there was a secret to making these Disney animated features, a secret to choosing the stories to tell. And he said, well, he had actually heard there were 3 secrets that Walt Disney told to the 9 wise old men, these animators who then lived on forever and were still around when Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg came to Disney. And they told them to Jeffrey, and that's how he judged movies. And very, very shortly, a universal theme, a theme that speaks to everyone in the audience, marquee value, a story that people know in advance of going to the movie, a story that a kind of story that speaks to them, and the feeling that you get from the movie, that the audience, he wanted to come out of the movie theater feeling better about themselves and those people around them than they did when they came in. And as a result, there used to be a thing called the Gong Show at Disney, where anyone in the animation studio could get up and give a 2-minute pitch to the heads of the studios. And there was a young story artist who came in, Mike Gabriel, and he held up a drawing that he had made of a young Indian girl in a canoe surrounded by animals and said Pocahontas. And Jeffrey from the back of the room said, that's going to be our next movie, because it fulfilled all 3 criteria. It was universal themes. It was a story that everybody knew, but nobody knew a lot about, perfect for a story. And it was a story about a girl saving her enemy's life, a white man who came in, create havoc in the land with her people, but she saved him when her father was going to kill him. So it fulfilled all 3 criteria. So it's hard, and it's not a science. It's more of a feeling, but that's primarily what we're all looking for in a story.
Let's talk a bit about writing itself, because you said that writing is hard. We could put a period in it and just go home, but there are those ways, maybe you can share some that you use when you have this kind of like a crisis that you want to write. I have a keyboard in here. You want to write and there's a block. So what do you do to overcome it? Can you share some of the ideas from your long career with us?
Well, most people hate the actual act of writing. What they love is having written something. Writing can be very hard. I personally don't have writer's block because there was a time when I was at Disney, the way it worked was I had an office there, and it was a 9 to 5 job. You had to go to the studio and you had a series of meetings, and you were given 20 minutes here and 10 minutes there where you could write. There were rewrites that were asked for all day, every day, 365 days a year. And it's not that you were sent off to some, idyllic island to write for a couple of weeks and come back. You had to dash back to your office, sit down, write something, and then deliver it instantaneously. And I realized very quickly that what people weren't looking for was a final perfect script. They're looking for the next step in the process. You rewrote so much at Disney and DreamWorks. I once was talking with Ted and Terry, who wrote the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but they had written Shrek and they'd written Aladdin and so forth. We're working on a movie together, The Road to El Dorado. And we figured that we had written for what was going to wind up to be an 80-page script. We had written maybe 20,000, 30,000 pages. So when you write that much, you realize that very often what you write won't make it to the screen, but it's a necessary next step the process? How do you get from the beginning of the story to the end of the story? So your mindset becomes different. You have to enjoy the process and not obsess about, oh, it has to be perfect. The urge to be perfect is what destroys people, and the obsession with coming up with the exact right solution. Well, there are no right or wrong solutions. You try one thing and then you try the other. So you just can't be precious about the process. I always say the one thing that helps writers more than anything else is a deadline.
Oh,
Just have to get it done or you're fired. That's a great incentive to get something written. It's why, though, it's so important to me that the room is a safe, supportive, positive environment. Because if you hand in a page and it's judged severely, and people are going to say either, oh, this is pretty good, or I hate it, or this is no good, you failed, that's a horrible incentive for writing anything. Instead, it should always be exciting. It should be, well, I don't understand this yet, and there's still challenges, but here it is on the page. That's a positive step. So it all ties together. It all ties together about, being positive and supportive versus judgmental, but then also just getting your pages done by the deadline.
Mm. I'm just laughing to myself at this moment because I'm in the midst of writing my PhD. And exactly those things that you are talking about now, I mean, like just writing and not aiming to be perfect and having this deadline out there, really, it's something that really helps me out. So I guess it's a bit universal ideas of writing that everybody actually also, future, maybe, let's hope, PhD in cultural studies can use also. So thank you for that. And I feel, supported also with my
yeah, the trouble, though, with writing a PhD thesis is nothing's more judgmental on the face of the earth than, handing in a PhD thesis.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But first, you just need to write it. Then
you
it's going to
need to get it down. And the most important thing I always tell people is you just need something on the written page. Although now there are no such things as pieces of paper, of course, it's all on the computer screen, but you need to get something down. You really don't get anywhere if you haven't written anything. You can agonize all you want, but it doesn't help you.
That's true. That's true. And if it comes to writing, can you tell me if there's any difference between writing for children and families, as we are joining those two audiences together, and for adults, let's call them that way? Is there anything different in the process of that, or do you think that there should be something taken under the consideration when you start a project like that?
No, I think it's exactly the same. It's the same. A movie is a movie, a story is a story. There are some basic common sense things. I do think I'm a commercial writer. I always have been. And there's a huge spectrum of the film business, which is not commercial, where the filmmaker is making a personal statement and not worrying about the audience. But I do worry about the audience. Commercial films are all about selling tickets and thinking about your audience. So when you're writing a family film, you have to remember that you're writing for a family, and it has to interest children as well as adults, which means that there are certain aspects of life which don't interest them and which is not going to connect with your audience. But having said that, ultimately, you're writing something that you think is interesting. When I first started working at Disney, I thought there was going to be a lot of meetings with researchers and marketing people and promotional people and toy manufacturers, and that there are going to be a lot of focus groups and research groups. And I was surprised that there was none of that. The only thing that mattered was, do I like this movie? Everybody has to write something that they like. If you're writing down to an audience or trying to second guess an audience, trying to say, well, I don't like this, but I guess the audience will, so I'll put it in, then you're going to fail. You have to be writing something that you love yourself. And the most successful children's film writers, family film writers, are people who genuinely love the movies they're making.
Yeah, that's important. And to be specific, do you have a favorite film or TV series or animation or any kind of film that was made for kids that you like to rewatch sometimes and you feel that it's still connecting with you as a viewer?
There are many, and I would hesitate to single out anything. Often it's the last movie that I've seen that I get very enthusiastic about. Just as an example, just last week at the workshop, I always do film analyses where I analyze the structure of a movie. And Magic, the head of the workshop, suggested this Norwegian film, which I had not seen, Los Bando, about a group of kids who get a band together and they make a road trip through Norway to a music festival. And I watched it. I loved it. I thought it was terrific. And then we were very lucky that we got the producer and the writer to talk about it. So I am constantly finding new movies that are out there they're all over the place, and there are a lot of fantastic movies, and I get excited every single time.
Yeah, and at the same time, people who are listening to us can know now that there is a chance to analyze the film, to meet the filmmakers during the workshop. So it's like an added value to working on their own projects. So I've seen Los Bando, actually. I really like that too. It's a funny story, and
yes,
there's a lot of energy in it.
But often people think, well, these stories just come out whole, that you just spew out these exciting things that happen one after the other, and for some mysterious reason it works. But the fact is, all films which are successful, which work with an audience, have a very carefully designed structure. And the story is structure, structure is story, I always say. Two aspects. You have the character, which is first and foremost, but you also have, how do we figure out who these characters are, the structure of the story. And it's really useful to look at movies that work and see, how do they work? What is the structure? How is the story told that helps, the audience empathize with the characters?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think we have all we need, basically, at this point in time. It was lovely to talk to you and have this insight in your work, and to be able to come back with my thoughts to Pocahontas, which is a gem in my heart forever.
Great.
So yeah, thank you very much once again, and have a lovely day, and good luck with the projects, with the new participants and new ideas. It really feels like I would love to be a part of that, because there's a lot of creativity and good spirit in that kind of work.
Yes, and I say that every year the submissions have been getting better and better. So I always look forward to the next workshop, because it's even better than the last.
Awesome. Thank you very much once again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.